Welcome, everybody, back to the Oklahoma Drill Podcast. I am your host, Andrew, and as always, I got my co-host, Matt, here with me. And we have a very special guest with us today as well, Miss Jeanna Kelley, the Associate Director of the NFL Team Brands for SB Nation. Miss Jeanna, thank you so much for being here. We are so pleased to have you with us. Go ahead and tell the people a little bit about your backstory in case they're not familiar. They definitely should be, and if they're not after this, I hope they will be. But go ahead, give them a fill-in.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I'm the associate director for our NFL team communities at SB Nation. But I started at our Falcon site, the Falcoholic, about 12 years ago, which seems absolutely wild to me at this point. I've really been there for like more than a quarter of my life. And so I've just kind of worked my way up through different jobs at SB Nation till I landed here. I used to be, I'm still credentialed with the Falcons, but I used to cover the team as a full-time beat writer. I've been a national NFL writer for SB Nation. So I've gotten to do all kinds of cool things after starting my career in the wedding industry. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's absolutely awesome. I've been following you for a handful of years now. You've been one of my favorites in this industry for a very long time. So I'm quite literally starstruck listening and getting to talk to you right now. Let's go ahead and jump right into the big news of the day. We picked a pretty good day to record this podcast with the franchise tag deadline and a pretty big trade that went down. Let's lead things off with the huge news. That is Russell Wilson being traded to the Denver Broncos. Jeanna, what was your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction was, obviously Pat McAfee was right, because I think that if Aaron Rodgers had the potential to go to Denver, I don't think that they would have made that trade. But I think that it's a good fit. It's kind of fun to see because we've got like a group email chain with all of the site managers from all of SB Nation's sites. And, there's been quite a bit of trash talk flying toward Field Goals, our Seahawks site. And and then, our Mile High Report, our Broncos site, they're celebrating, of course. So, I really don't think that the Broncos have had a consistent quarterback since Peyton Manning retired. And so this is huge for them. It's going to be really interesting to see how this works out for Seattle, what they do at quarterback. I don't think that this is the strongest year to draft somebody. You may be able to get somebody via trade, but, are they really going to be, on par with Russell Wilson? And they also have a lot of other issues on that roster that they need to fix. And so, I think that this might not be the best season for the Seahawks.
No, I don't think so either. And, as Jet fans, we hold a lot of animosity towards former Jet Jamal Adams, how he forced his way off our team because things weren't looking great. Then he goes to another team thinking that they're Super Bowl bound, and now they are in rebuilding mode as well. So from the Jets fan point of view, I feel like we're all just sort of sitting back with our popcorn and kind of enjoying this.
As a very petty person, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. You had mentioned you spent your time on Falcoholics. Obviously, you're a Falcons fan yourself. And so a thing or two about pettiness and a thing or two about other teams getting on and bragging on you from the inside, from the Seahawks perspective. But over in Jets land, it's been a lot of jokes. It's been a lot of celebration. It's been a lot of good feelings overall. We don't get that very often. So when we do get them, we cherish them. I always like to say, God forbid the Jets ever win a Super Bowl, we'll be the most insufferable fan base in the NFL. And I fully believe that. So this is another one of those days.
Yep. No, I completely understand that. That's very relatable as a Falcons fan.
Although it's kind of short-sighted because at the same time, we now have Russell Wilson in the AFC. So that's just one more godlike quarterback in our division that we have to go up against.
Yeah, that's really what you guys needed.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of thinking maybe not so fast because the AFC West is now so talented, maybe it eats itself alive. And
Possibly.
it's going to be a situation where the worst quarterback in that division is Derek Carr, and he was a playoff quarterback last year, and he's been an MVP candidate before.
Yes.
It's really tough.
True. It is tough. They'll eat each other alive, but at the same time, you still got to go through them if you're going to want to actually play for anything in the postseason.
Yeah, no doubt. And they got a defense too. They still got Pat Surtain there. They didn't trade Bradley Chubb included with this, which was rumored at first when the news was first leaking. They got to hold on to him too. There was a Von Miller posted on Instagram about potentially coming back and which number he'd wear in Denver. Well, maybe he had some inside information. about what they were doing. And maybe now we understand why he wants to go back and play there. Maybe that happens too. The Broncos' chances are definitely looking good. The AFC West is definitely tough. This was the biggest trade in a while. Very rarely do all pro quarterbacks get moved. And when they do, it's always a big deal.
Yeah.
Let's get into some of the franchise tag players because those were some other big news. I got the list here of all the guys that got the tag. And that was Dalton Schultz, the tight end for the Cowboys. We had Mike Gesicki, the tight end for the Dolphins. Jesse Bates, the Bengals safety, which hurt my heart a lot. I was really hoping he'd shake free and the Jets would go after him. Chris Godwin, the receiver in Tampa. David Njoku, the tight end in Cleveland. Orlando Brown, the Chiefs offensive tackle. Devontae Adams, I believe, got the tag at the last minute after Rodgers' deal got figured out with Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay. And last but not least, Cam Robinson, the tackle in Jacksonville. Which of these was the most surprising in your opinion, Jeanna? And which of these do you think was the worst idea?
That's a really good question. I really don't think that there are any bad tags in that bunch. One thing that has stood out to me, though, is that, you've got a couple of tight ends in there, and that's not traditionally a position that you would think about a team, multiple teams using a franchise tag on. I'm especially interested in the Browns tagging Njoku because I think that it may mean that they won't re-sign Austin Hooper, and I would love to see Austin Hooper come back to Atlanta. And so that's the one that I am most interested in. I think that Devontae Adams is obviously probably, and Chris Godwin, the Bucs have had so much attrition. I mean, losing Brady, they've lost other players. I think that they really had to keep him. So I don't think that that one was too surprising. Yeah, I don't really think that any of those are terrible. But yeah, Njoku was the one that was most interesting to me, selfishly, because I would like to have Hooper back.
Yeah, these tight ends, we were kind of hoping that a lot of these guys would probably slip through to free agency, being that for the Jets, it's probably the biggest void of talent on our team right now. I think we have Wesco as our, we have Graham and Wesco as our most seasoned tight ends going into next season. So the lack of talent that's going to make it to free agency is kind of alarming, and it sort of means that we need to focus more on the draft to really fill these positions. But the Godwin tag is probably the one that surprised me the most. Because why? Why would they even worry about paying him when they now are in rebuild mode, right? They are missing a quarterback. Who without a quarterback, what do you have really? So without Brady there, who's throwing to him?
Very good question. And as somebody who likes the team in the NFC South, I am hoping that they fill that role with somebody who is much, much worse than Tom Brady, which sure. I think is not a high bar to clear. I think that that's exactly what they will bring in.
Yeah, we as Jets fans definitely know what it's like to want someone worse than Tom Brady, at the very least, to not have to play twice a year. Definitely understand you on that part. An interesting part for this aspect related to the tag as well for me, and speaking of the Buccaneers in particular, a name I like for them a lot now is Jordan Love. Because I think he's the perfect type of guy that Bruce Arians could work with his history with quarterbacks and what he likes and what he's shown that he can do. And I think that is with the weapons that they have in Tampa now, having Chris Godwin back, they still have Cameron Brate. They still have Mike Evans. I'm forgetting their slot receiver that Brady loved that caught the Hail Mary at halftime. Scotty Miller, is that his name?
Scotty Miller? Is it Humphreys or Miller?
One of those two. They have weapons. And so they would have targets for Jordan Love if he were to go in. He's had some time to be seasoned. We don't know necessarily how good he would be as a starter, but I think if there's any coach that could work with him and improve him, it could be Bruce Arians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that Green Bay probably will trade Love. Kurt Benkert's he's on the depth chart behind him. He's had a full, 2 offs. Well, he's going into a second off season in the scheme. I think, from all accounts, it seems like he's settled in really well. He's a seasoned backup. He spent a number of years in Atlanta. So I think that it's a pretty easy decision for them to move on from Love after they've, given him a chance to develop behind Rodgers, and they should be able to get a decent haul for him.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, quite honestly, because I think if there was ever a time to move him, you should do it now before the 5th-year option comes up, because otherwise teams are going to want that option included. So they have this year as the trial run. And then at the end of this year, they can decide if they want to pick up that option or not. If you wait too long, then what you're going to get back from a trade asset value is going to go way down. So I really think now is the time. If they're going to do it at all, this is when you do it. Otherwise, then you're keeping Jordan Love until Rodgers retires.
Yeah, which doesn't really make much sense.
No,
because he's just going to waste away on that bench, and they can finally, move on. And the whole Rodgers controversy is over. They have him, so they can sort of settle in and maybe get some return for him. And for the Buccaneers, for the Buccaneers, yes, I think we can confirm he is worse than Brady.
Yes, so that works for me. I approve.
Can't confirm. My quarterback evaluations are usually awful, but I can say with certainty that Jordan Love is worse than Tom Brady. I don't have to worry about old takes exposed for that one at all. Not whatsoever. All right, let's get into the last little bit of big news over the last couple of days. I'm sure as a Falcons fan, Jeanna, you've enjoyed these big trades kind of stealing the spotlight, but that has been Calvin Ridley and his situation with his suspension. I want to be very clear and echo in lockstep with what you said in your fantastic article about Calvin Ridley and his mental health. For anyone who hasn't read that, I highly recommend you read that. It has a great perspective on just mental health in general and how it really needs to be treated as a in general topic. But on top of that, Calvin Ridley in this situation in particular, and separating what is football and what is his own personal situation. So you had said it yourself, and I'm going to echo your own words, in that we can separate Calvin Ridley's mental health from this situation. And yes, that they are not one and the same, and that we can respect Calvin Ridley's mental health as we should, and also address this situation for what it is. I don't think anyone, go ahead, by all means.
I was just going to say, and I think that it's very fair to criticize Calvin Ridley for this. It was a very bad decision. Yes, the punishment is very harsh, but it's because the league does have to protect the integrity of the game. I have a very long explainer coming on this whole situation tomorrow on the Falcoholic at 8 a.m. Just because there are a lot of unanswered questions for me about, the league issuing a season-long suspension for a guy betting $1,500 on 3 parlays over the course of 5 days. And then, they're making like $270 million off of their sports betting partnership. So
exactly.
I dig into that a little bit in an article that'll drop tomorrow at 8. But, it's just a really unfortunate situation all around.
Yeah. And it's not like he's denying it. I think he's more acting out in defiance of it. So it's not exactly like he's very sorry about it. Now, about the punishment, I think it's a little too much. While I understand there's essence of the Black Sox in the air, but at the same time, and Pete Rose, but at the same time, it's a lot compared to a lot of other things that the league is very lenient on, especially like domestic violence. So this punishment in comparison is just a little out of whack.
Yeah, I actually get into that specifically in the piece that I wrote for tomorrow. I think that it was 2016. The league said that they were going to set the baseline suspension for a first offense of the personal conduct policy that involved, any kind of violence, domestic violence, any kind of violence. And they've really never enforced it. They suspended Ezekiel Elliott for more than that. Just out of nowhere, even though it was something that had happened when he was in college. And then you had guys like Josh Brown from the Giants who had, a long documented history of basically terrorizing his wife. And he initially got 2 games before the Giants were shamed into,
doing the right thing. Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah. That's the thing for me is I don't think anyone is arguing that what Calvin Ridley did is wrong and not something that should be allowed or praised or celebrated or anything close to it. But I think what people are asking for is consistency. They're asking for things to be on an equal playing field. And so that everyone understands, like you're saying, Josh Brown being a full-blown criminal is a lot different than Calvin Ridley betting $1,500 on a parlay. Neither of them should be allowed, and neither of them should be addressed with no suspension or anything else whatsoever. But that doesn't mean that one isn't significantly worse than the other. And when it's so much easier for the NFL to hand out these smaller suspensions for much more serious issues, than things like gambling or even things like marijuana testing, where you have marijuana being legal either medically or federally in more than half of the states in the country right now. And you'll have players like Josh Gordon be indefinitely suspended after repeated missed tests. Now, am I saying that Josh Gordon shouldn't have missed and failed a bunch of tests in a row? No, but I would much rather deal with Josh Gordon and a drug issue that is a medical issue than someone like Josh Brown being a serial abuser. And only giving that a 2-game suspension is just asinine to me. You have Kareem Hunt still playing in the NFL.
Yeah.
And no one seems to care.
No, not at all. And I think that the way that I look at this Ridley situation specifically, on one hand, it is historic. This is the first time a player has ever been suspended for this since the NFL did sign these, multi-million-dollar partnerships with all of these sports books and sports betting partners. And on top of that, he's only the 5th NFL player in history to ever get caught doing this. So it is a historic thing. But in my mind, I think that you could make an argument that maybe, his team was harmed by this because now he's going to be suspended for the whole season. But realistically, Calvin Ridley is the person who was harmed most by his choice here. And the other issues that we're talking about, there is somebody else who actually experienced harm because of those issues. And so, I just think that it's a discrepancy that I really have a lot of questions about.
I think there's a little bit of backstory here to this punishment that the NFL has doled out. That you have the issue in Miami where you have owners being accused of throwing seasons to get draft picks. So there's already
offering bounties for losses.
Bounties, yeah. So there's already an air of unfairness in the league or of rigging. Yeah. So, and then you also have the entrance of sports books being introduced to the league. So I feel like they want to look above board, above anything else right now. And this is more of a tone setter, more of a look. We want this league to look fair in all aspects. Just look at this punishment.
And I think that a lot of the punishments that the league doles out in high-profile cases are to some extent performative for that reason.
Yeah, and that's the PR side of it. And that's always going to be how the PR side of the NFL works. And I think part of why Roger Goodell gets paid so much is because he takes the bullets for the owners and handles the PR side. And when people are upset about how things are handled in the NFL, he's the one taking the blame for it and not the 32 people sitting in the high roll seats with billions of dollars in their pockets. So what's going to be the real interesting thing for me, and I think the timing of this is really, really, I don't even know the word, quite honestly, to describe it, because I don't want to say good because it's not a good situation, but I think it will be interesting to see how the NFL stands. On Friday, it's reported just recently that a grand jury is going to be given evidence in the Deshaun Watson case.
Oh my goodness. I missed that today.
Yeah, that just broke recent, like less than an hour ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So my thought, again, not having much of a criminal, justice history, but knowing enough of how the system works to understand things, they don't do that unless they have evidence. They're not going to waste the time. They're not going to summon a grand jury and waste the time clearing people for a grand jury unless they have evidence to show. So if criminal charges are brought against Deshaun Watson and he isn't indefinitely suspended by the NFL, there's going to be serious questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting to see. So we will see what happens with this grand jury. We will see what happens after that. But I don't think, especially with Calvin Ridley, and not that this should matter, but just speaking on the NFL and being rigged, I don't think the profile or the caliber of the player should have anything to do with the length of the suspension. It shouldn't matter if you are a quality player or not. Calvin Ridley was a great player for the Falcons, and he should be facing a suspension for what he did. We'll just all agree that it should not be to this length if you are not going to suspend much more serious issues for, if not the same length, if not significantly longer.
Right.
Agreed. And not to sound too callous, but I don't think the Jets will be trading for Ridley anytime soon. I know he was definitely on the minds of a few Jets fans for a while now, with with word of him being on the trade market. So that's another wide receiver off the market for the Jets going forward.
Yeah, another wide receiver off the market in general. I think this is a good place to end, Jeanna, because both teams now, I think, our Jets and your Falcons could potentially be in the wide receiver market. So at 8th overall, first question would be, do you think that's a possibility for the Falcons? And if so, if you are interested in a wide receiver, who's your favorite so far of the draft prospects if you've gotten into them?
So I have not gotten the draft prospects yet, or I'm just starting to. I do think that wide receiver is a possibility now. I did not feel that way before Ridley's suspension necessarily, but I think that, just looking, because they could lose Russell Gage to free agency, who's really been like a security blanket for Matt Ryan. Kyle Pitts is phenomenal, but he cannot be the entire offense.
No.
And so I am a little bit of a homer about the draft. And so I would take any like Ohio State receivers.
You really can't go wrong there.
Yeah, no, Chris Olave is my dude, and he's been my dude for a long time now. I've said a little bit before the combine in our group chat that Matt and I have talking about the draft that I was really looking for the Jets to skip on wide receiver in free agency and in the first round because they could take Chris Olave at 34. And then he ran an unofficial 4.26 like an hour after I said that. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, never mind. Yeah, he's not lasting till 34.
Nothing ruins draft plans pre-combine than the combine.
Yeah, exactly. Jeanna, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time, getting the chance to talk to us. This awesome day of news that we had to cover. I'm so happy, quite honestly, that we picked this time to record because we had so much to talk about and such big topics to get into. Thank you so much again for being here. Go ahead and let the people know where they can find you and follow your work because it's all fantastic and everyone should definitely be checking it out.
Absolutely. And thank you both so much for having me. You can find me on Twitter at Jeanna Thomas, it's Jeanna Thomas. And I don't get to write as much as I used to, just because I'm in more of an editorial role now. But when I do, it's typically at the Falcoholic. Like I said, I've got a real banger drop in tomorrow at 8 a.m. So that's also fun. And then check me out on the Falcoholic podcast. I'm the co-host over there with my friend David Walker. And we have a lot of very, very sad podcasts during the season. We have a little bit more fun in the off season when the Falcons can't actually hurt us. So, maybe they can a little bit. This has been actually a terrible week.
Yeah, that sounds like our show. Yeah, that's definitely how our show went. I remember in the summer we had done our preview for our record predictions and went through the whole record, and we're like, yeah, 9-7 is totally reasonable. 9-8, they'll be right on the fringe of the wild card. They don't have to make the playoffs this year, but if they do, it's cool. And then I remember post week 2. After 4 interceptions from Zach Wilson against the Patriots and the sky was falling immediately and people were saying we should trade Zach for Russell Wilson. Those were times. Yeah, those were definitely times.
Those were certainly times.
If we're anything, we're optimists.
You've got to be, because otherwise we wouldn't be doing this every Sunday.
Exactly.
No, being a Jets fan is, and I'm sure being a Falcons fan many, many times, is very masochistic in a lot of ways. And you just, once you understand that and compartmentalize that and accept it, you're a lot more comfortable with yourself.
That's very true. And yesterday, I'm going to leave you with this. Yesterday, Dave Choate, who is the editor-in-chief of the Falcoholic, tweeted from the Falcoholic account that being a Falcons fan is like reading a make your own adventure book, or I can't remember what they were called.
Choose your own adventure book.
Choose your own adventure book, but all the pages are on fire. And I think that is a very accurate description.
I can relate.
That about sums it up. Yep. Yeah,
yes.
That about sums it up. Thank you again so much, Jeanna. This has been so much fun.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.